Hey, we're here at the Bass Pro Shops Cabela's Nitro booth. We welcome everyone in that's watching us from around the world on Facebook Live. A lot of cool things. Guys, come on into the booth. We're going to have some cool Q&A. A lot of things going on with Rick Clunn, legendary bass angler, four-time Bassmaster Classic champion. Rick, you know, when you interview someone, we're on day 3 now with you, and you start running out of things to talk about maybe, but I don't feel like we're even close to touching the surface with your history in this event. Obviously, we've had the first 2 days of competition. We have Jason Christie out with a big lead, 5 pounds coming into today. Looking at Bass Track earlier, he seems to be having a little bit of a slow start. What do you think's happening, and what do you feel like his mindset is going into this day, and what was yours? I know we talked a little bit about Pine Bluff, Arkansas. You had a huge lead going into the final day. What is your focus, and if you were out there and in the boat, what would you be telling Jason?
Well, you know, every angler's a little bit different. I tended to try to figure it, going into the final day, believe it or not, I was trying to understand the mathematics of that day. In other words, second place guy is 5 pounds behind me. If he catches 15, you know, which it's going to be hard, but it's possible. But then I've got to catch 10. And if the third place guy, and I need the math all the way down. And so once what that did for me, you'd say, well, that put pressure on you. But no, I realized I didn't have to overperform. You know, I didn't have to take chances. I just had to stay with what I've been doing, what I've been working, and win or lose. Then I really felt like I stuck with, you know, what's been working for me. Now, all anglers have to change at times, and I think Edwin, I know, is trying to change a little bit. But this tournament's going to be won from 12 on, probably, or lost from 12 on. And really, because if you look at the weights, and that's typical this time of year, the bigger bites and the better bites come usually midday on, just due to the warming effect of the day and all of that. And that's what really where I think you'll see, and that's why Christie will be hard to catch, because he's been having a very strong afternoon. This morning, to me, is not really relevant. It is relevant to him, because if you don't have any fish there, it starts to put pressure on you.
Yeah. You know, one thing I have noticed, I can remember a tournament we had at Lake Guntersville. I believe Kelly Jordan won that event. It was a real strong lipless crankbait tournament. And on the final day, I went down a stretch that I had been catching them, and I didn't get bit at all. And I changed from a lipless crankbait to a spinnerbait. This situation here on this lake, they're fishing a lot of bladed baits. For those home, they know it as a chatterbait probably. A lot of those lures that really have a lot of either sound or feel on the lateral line, I personally feel sometimes when you're going through those same areas, those fish get conditioned to that. Have you seen that in events, and do you think maybe some of these guys that are going through those same areas may make adjustments, or do you think they're going to stick with what they got? What would you do?
That's fascinating to me, because we're dealing with a creature that we don't give a lot of credit for having a brain, and yet they can adjust. And you and I have seen it way too often. They, just like deer, that opening morning of deer season, by midday they know something's going on, and they get wary, and they get leery, and they get less aggressive. And fish are doing the same thing. They know that they feel your presence. You know, whether it's your depth finders, whether it's your troll motors, whether it's the lure, they know you're there. And after that several days in a row, they start to really be a little bit, you know, not very aggressive. And that's the whole key. They're still there, but they've become less aggressive. And that's, so, you know, but I think really, I know Jason said he lost quite a few fish yesterday, but that's the nature of a bladed jig. And that's really what told me he was throwing a bladed jig. Bladed jig is notorious for losing fish, and that, you know, that's for one reason I won St. John's throwing 2 different bladed jigs. Okay, and I caught every big fish that hit me. Edwin Evers, who's second, that same day on a bladed jig, lost almost every big fish that hit him. It's a real strange bait to understand, and it's not bad luck. If there's something mechanical going on there, you have to figure out.
Yeah, it is. That lure probably has the hook moving more than any other lure we fish, the way it jumps side to side. You know, talking about fish getting accustomed, every time you talk, it takes me to a tournament. I can remember reading you won an FLW event on Pickwick Lake in June, and I can remember I got in that event. I wasn't fishing FLW all year that year, but I don't know many I've been more fired up about the fish than that event. And I finished in the money, but really didn't have a good event. But I can remember you talking about it was so important not to idle over those schools, and you were actually stopping 40, 50 yards short using your trolling motor to get up to those schools before you fished them, and you walked away with that event. Do you think that's a little bit about what happens maybe to the Classic on the guys on the final day with all the boat traffic to the leaders?
There's no doubt that it is, and yet that Pickwick was a very good example that there was a magical distance you had to keep the boat away from them, and several times those first couple of days, fighting a fish or culling, I would allow the boat to get in too close, and it was over. It was over. And yet, if I stayed off from them, they would keep, you keep catching them. And then I only had the camera boat with me at Pickwick. I didn't have, multiple follow boats with me. I maybe had one or two. But now you factor in these guys that have 40 or 50 follow boats like we were talking about yesterday, it's having an effect.
Right.
And and that's again why a lot of our guys are trying to change a little bit of a lure presentation. When I won with 75 pounds in July in 1984 at Pine Bluff, Arkansas, the third day of that event, I went through my water I was throwing a 6A bomber twice, never had a bite. And I knew I had a big lead. I had some other water. But I said, okay, I'm not leaving here yet.
So you went through there twice without a bite?
Yeah, the whole 50 yards.
Oh, my goodness.
But then I changed to a shad trap. It's just a little different bait. In 2 more passes, I had 28 pounds.
Unbelievable.
So that's what these guys are trying to figure out today. Can I get these same fish to trigger better now on a bait that they haven't seen, a bait they haven't heard, a bait they haven't felt?
Right. People ask me a lot. I know when you go into a bass prop shop store and you see the walls of lures, all of the different varieties, and there's a reason to the madness, so to speak, because it takes a lot of different things. I want to go back to that. So on the first 2 days, you caught them on that 6A, I assume, or you wouldn't have pulled up and thrown it on the third day. Is that correct?
Right. No, that's what I had found them with, and that's what I caught them on the first 2 days was the 6A bomber.
That's amazing. And then you get there on the third day, go up and down it, and don't get a bite, switch lures, and catch 20 pounds.
Yeah, the fact that we tend to give ourselves too much credit, I thought, okay, maybe I've caught them all.
Yeah.
But which is rarely the case. And in fact, by making that simple change, I caught the biggest string of the 3 days very quickly.
Right.
So this is where we really need to be better as anglers, understanding the total sensory abilities of this wild creature called a fish.
Right.
Sight, sound, vibration, unilateral line, water displacement. And those are the things, once you understand those are the moves you can make mentally to switch from what you were doing. And if you can determine, like you said, they were catching them on a real vibrating, type of bait, maybe you need to go something a little more subtle.
Right.
But you get that information through understanding what they're feeling from that lure.
Right. And it definitely becomes a feeling of what happened the day before and how quickly it was. Hey, where we're at here, guys, we're at the Bass Pro Shops Cabela's Nitro booth here in Greenville, South Carolina at the Bassmaster Classic. We welcome everyone watching all over the world, actually, on Facebook. We've got some people that have tuned in here. Just want to say hello. Mark, Alyssa, Susan, Sean, Grant, all watching. Everyone, tell us where you're from. Let us know what's going on. A lot of people tuned in right now, Rick, to hear your segment. We also want to remind everyone we've got Kevin Van Dam that's going to be joining us this morning around 11:30 Eastern Time, about 10 minutes away. So we're going to keep going with Rick here. Rick, day 3 of the Classic, we talked about it. The move and the moves you do or you don't make. Obviously, you talked about the James River. Take me through. We've talked about the James River and the Pine Bluff Classic. Let's go back to some of the earlier classics. I believe Lake Toho, maybe, is that correct? Was one of them?
Toho and Gunnersville.
Toho and Gunnersville. Touch real quick. Day 3, some things that happened because those events were a little bit closer in nature, as far as the competitors go.
Yeah, the Gunnersville was kind of a magical tournament because it's you know, pretty much I had two completely different patterns. I had a small fish pattern, a 2-pound fish pattern that was on a little small square bill. A lot of people think square bills came about when Kevin won down in New Orleans. That's when
Right.
but they,
40 years ago.
yeah, but
Right.
I was throwing a little Bagley honeybee square bill, and that
Right.
was for 20, I caught 27 fish in that tournament. 22 of them came on that little Bagley, but the key bait was that big bladed spinner bait, burning it out there off the grass where I caught the big ones.
Now, as I recall, didn't you have maybe on back-to-back casts like an 8-something, and or you caught, there was something, maybe the same spot or something?
Well, you know, because you and I have now been around long enough to know, that second morning I was in like third place, but I didn't even catch a limit the first day. Right? And Bo Dowden was leading it. That second morning, you could look at this black frontal. That was an October event, the black cold front coming. I mean, it's, you know, one of those
Right.
beautiful, ugly black cold fronts.
It's
that's
pretty at the time, but you
lightning
know what's
dropping out of
coming.
them.
Yeah.
Today, I would have never seen those fish because they wouldn't let us go. But Ray
Right.
Scott goes, "Get the heck out of here," and we all took off.
Yeah.
And I had to run straight toward it to Browns Creek, and there was a little weed bed out there in the mountain before you got to the bridge in Browns Creek, and I got him down and I started burning that spinner bait. I caught a 715, a 6.8, a 6.4, and a 4.8, and then the front hit.
Wow.
I never had another bite there the rest of the tournament. And then I depended on those small fish the rest of the tournament to win the
Right.
event. Toho was lucky.
All right, lucky. I don't hear
Now,
Rick
I
Clunn
hate to
say that
use that.
much.
I don't, but
explain.
the only thing that was going for me at Toho was super confidence, because Toho I planned to lock through and go down to Kissimmee, and it was foggy, and they let us go. I couldn't find the lock.
Wow.
And then I got pissed off. After about 30 minutes of circling, I said, the next weed line I hit, I'm going to just start fishing.
So we're going to take you guys. There's no GPS now, correct, Rick? You're kind of guessing. No GPS to look at with the
No,
fog
right, no
locked in.
GPS. So the next weed line I hit had one of those little pig trails going back through the weeds. I went through there, and about my third cast with the Floyd's buzzbait, I caught a 7-something.
Oh my goodness.
And I won it the first day because nobody caught any fish in that tournament.
Right, right. That's amazing. That's pretty cool, you know, just hearing the different scenarios of how they come about. And I think probably thinking back to Lake Gunnersville, you do that prompt was coming, let me go to where I can catch a big fish really quick, and then you catch 4, and then just make the rest of the tournament work out. That's pretty cool. So, hey, we're going to stay here. We got KVD coming up. I don't know if he's close by, but we're going to keep rolling, Rick. I guess
Okay.
we're doing it on the fly here, so we'll just get Kevin to come up as we do it. What have you seen transition over your course of time with the new anglers? I know you've touched on information. One of the things that I've admired about your career, I've tried to do this myself. I take a lot of pride when I go win an event to say, I don't know that it's pride, but I get more gratification out of it when I go to an event like we had at Lake Okeechobee last year, and I found that group of fish, or Lake Champlain, where I found that rock pile. There actually was a bunch of gulls that stayed over that area. I never seen them diving, the fish breaking. I never seen the gulls diving, but they stayed over that one area. And me being able to put that together, we live in a world where now so much information is readily available, and I think it's going to hurt some of the young anglers that are wanting to get into the sport, so that when you get to an event, and now we have rules where that is taken away for a whole year. Explain your analogy and your thought process, because you're probably the only angler that I can say that has never veered from that. You haven't. You've stayed true to the course because that's what you want to do. Is it a personal thing with you, or do you think it's more, this is the style of the way I've caught them and I'm going to stick with it?
Well, I think it's basically just, it was in the beginning, I had no other choice. I didn't know anybody, and then I figured out how the Classic was being fished, and I knew that would be the thing that would make my career. Then I started practicing for the Classic every tournament of the year, which required that you didn't talk to anybody.
Right.
And so I developed that skill, which gave me a tremendous amount of confidence. And nowadays I teach with a lot of high school kids and college kids. And in the beginning, the first few I went to, I kind of emphasized, don't listen to the doc talk, don't get information, learn to do it yourself. But I quickly realized that was wrong. That today, to compete, you have to do both, okay, if your rules allow you to. And so now today, I try to teach them, okay, here's how you learn to find fish on your own. And here's how you should use all this information, because all of us are trying to help those kids. So they're inundated by information. But the most important thing I can summarize here about these kids now said, okay, you can listen to that information. That guy points out there that point and say, go over there and throw a worm on that point and you'll win the tournament, and you do. But you never let that man walk away from you without asking this one question. Why are they there?
Why are they there?
Okay. Are they coming in because they're fixing to spawn? If they spawn and they're moving back out in their staging area, learn fish movement. Even if you're getting that kind of help, know why the fish are there. Because that's ultimately the most important thing.
Right, right. I think one of my favorite, listening to guys early on as I started my career, I always heard Gary Klein talk about it's not just about where they're at, where are they going and where have they been. And I've seen so many tournaments, Lake Toho, for example, the tournament Shaw Grigsby won. Shaw had a huge bag the first day sight fishing and was able to hold on through that event. I found one of the biggest schools I've ever found on a lipless crankbait out in open water in those hydrilla domes. And I could catch them first thing in the morning, but then I kept trying to make that happen as the sun come up. I was stubborn. I got probably too focused on what I was doing. Go 2 years after that event, and I win at Toho punching hydrilla mats. I was on the winning school of fish, but I was only catching them first thing in the morning and not doing that as the day goes on. In closing, what tournament jumps out to you? And I know you've had a lot that you realized after the event you were on the winning fish, but you were not able to capitalize on them in that moment.
I've only fished about 500 B.A.S.S events.
I kind of put you on the spot on that one a little bit.
And then about that, plus more than that in other organizations. You know the one that stands out to me when you talk about fish movement more than any, and it's not really what you asked, but it's when I fished the tournament at Logan Martin. And you mentioned yesterday that the first Classic you zeroed all 3 days.
Right.
Well, at Logan Martin, I zeroed all 3 days. And it was very humbling because I was second the year before there in the Classic, or third.
Right.
And it was very humbling, but I totally misunderstood the direction the fish were going. Instead of following them, I was moving away from them every day. And so that's why it's so key to understand, okay, are they coming to me? Are they moving away from me? Are they moving shallow? Are they moving deep? And it's not a question that can easily be answered any day. And that's where we stumble, and that's why we're not perfect in what we do by any means. But it emphasized to me again to really understand, because I moved deeper every day during that event. I thought the fish would move deeper on me, and they actually had moved shallower.
They actually went shallower.
So, and it was in July and August, and so your brain. So it's probably our biggest question that we have to answer every day, and that's what they have to answer out there today.
No doubt. Yeah, that Coosa River is always a mystery, and that time of year, we've seen Robert Hamilton win it out deep, and then we've seen guys win it extremely shallow, and a lot of in between. Hey guys, we got an update. We're actually going to have KVD here at 1 o'clock, I believe. Roland and Jimmy at 12:30 Eastern time, and then KVD is going to be here at 1 o'clock. We kind of got a fluid situation as we're trying to get these pros in and out of here, but we're going to be here on Facebook Live in and out all day. Rick, thank you so much for having us. 3 great days, guys. You can go back to the Bass Pro Shops Cabela's Facebook page and check out these interviews that we've had. Rick's has been some of my favorite interviews that we've done. So you guys stay tuned. We're going to have lots more.